All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. As you know, I'm Dr. Mirhom, board certified psychiatrist, and I get to have the pleasure of speaking with some of the most amazing guests as we discuss health, mental health, and our role today. So today I'm joined by a particular expert that I've been really excited to speak with. It's a topic I think that we all want to hear about. I have with me Tal Ben Shahar, who is the Happiness Studies Academy co-founder. He has taught a course in Harvard on this course. He has taught a course in Columbia on this subject matter, and is really a subject I think that we all want to know about. This idea of happiness. What does it mean? What does it look like? So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Me too. So as you might have heard this before, this little quote, from the classic band. So John Lennon once he spoke about when he was a kid. There was an assignment, right? And the teacher asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "Happy." And they told him, "You don't understand the assignment." He said, "You don't understand life." And he dropped the mic. He said, "I'm John Lennon. Don't tell me what to do." So can you just tell us a little bit about kind of this idea of happiness and kind of what your work has been like studying?
Yeah, let me start with another quote or a story. This is by Marty Seligman, who's from the University of Pennsylvania and considered by many to be the founder of the field of positive psychology. So when he addresses parents, he often begins with the following question. He asks them, "So, what would you like for your children?" And they all answer basically what John Lennon said. I want my child to be happy, or I want my child to have good relationships, or to be resilient, healthy. And he makes a list of all the things that parents want for their children. And then, okay, we're moving over to list number two. Question number two, he asked them, "What do your children learn in school?" And they say, the three R's, math, arithmetic, writing. They learn geography, history, biology, and so on. There's almost no overlap between the two lists. And that's unfortunate because, well, of course, it's important, to study the three R's, to be well-versed in your history and geography. Why are schools almost entirely neglecting happiness, especially today, when we have a science of happiness? And, this is what I've been focusing on for the past, 30 plus years. And there are whole, departments and schools now focusing on the very important question, which is how can you increase levels of well-being?
It's critical, and that's why I feel like today our viewers are sort of in luck to, if you missed out on this in school and you haven't been a part of where this, school is teaching you how to be happy, you get this kind of sneak preview here. So, when you speak about the science of happiness, for some folks, they figure, okay, I will just be happy if I have some more stuff. If I only got this other car, then boom, I'll be happy. What does the science tell us about what actually makes us happy?
Yeah. So, the first thing that it tells us is that that most of the time are wrong, because we do believe, I believe that for years that the path to happiness lies in achieving more, in conquering this mountain, getting into this school, getting this job, finding this partner, and then we'll be happy. It turns out not to be the case. Yeah, it leads to a temporary high, a spike in our levels of well-being, but that's ephemeral. It doesn't last. What leads to lasting happiness are things like relationships and cultivating relationships. So it's not finding the right person that's most important for happiness. It's cultivating that one chosen relationship that's most important for happiness, or appreciating what we have. If we can, as Oprah reminds us to do constantly, if we can appreciate what we have rather than take it for granted, then we'll be happier. If we can exercise regularly, eat healthfully on an ongoing basis, and again, or meditate regularly, not go to that 10-day retreat, which is great, but that's not the answer to the question of happiness. But rather, if we meditate for 5-10 minutes every day for months and years, that will increase levels of happiness. So it's doing specific things consistently that is the key to happiness, not that one-off achievement.
I love that. It seems to be a strategic element to it and a consistent element to it, that if we were to kind of build these habits, if you will, right? These like happiness habits, and incorporate them daily, then that really makes a big difference. And to your point here, yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah, and yeah, just to reiterate what you said, the key is habits. John Dryden, a British poet who lived 400 years ago or so, wrote that we first make our habits and then our habits make us.
Oh, love that.
And the key is to create habits, to do things consistently so that they end up making us. And they literally make us, by the way, because our neural pathways actually change and we become more grateful, more appreciative. We learn to interpret reality in a specific way if we practice it consistently. We learn to be more present if we practice it consistently, and so on.
Can you unpack that for me a little bit more? Because what some feedback I get from people is, I want to be more grateful, or I want to do these things consistently, but I'm not that guy. I'm a pessimist. I just see the worst in things, and it's not my nature, right? I'm just not meant to have this kind of stuff. Yeah. How do you sort of walk someone through actually creating a habit, or maybe first breaking down a negative one to create a positive habit?
Yeah. So the first thing is really to recognize things for what they are. And there is a grain of truth in a pessimist saying, well, I'm a pessimist, because we are born with certain genetic predispositions. Genes, early experiences make a big difference when it comes to our happiness and overall well-being. At the same time, there's also a lot of evidence showing that we can change. I often tell my students that I'm the right person to teach happiness. Why? Because I wasn't born with happy genes. I was born with anxious genes. From a very young age, and from all the stories that I heard from my parents and grandparents, I inherited that.
I hear you. I'm there too.
So, and again, many of us are, whether it's the anxious genes or depressive genes or pessimism. And the question is not, how can I become, a Pollyanna? How can I always look on the bright side and be calm? No, that's not the question consistently. The question is, how can I become less anxious? How can I become calmer? How can I work on these things, and over time make improvements, make headways? And that comes through consistency. What's interesting? There's great research by Carol Dweck from Stanford on the growth mindset. And what she shows is that even learning about neural pathways, even learning about the fact that our brain changes literally till the day we die, that in and of itself can make us more susceptible to change. So what I have to tell those pessimists or those anxious individuals or depressed individuals is just take a look at your brain. Look at how it changes, how it can change, and I'll start doing the work. In other words, be open to change and then put in the effort.
That's so powerful. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that part, that there's an actual neurobiology, neurochemical change that takes place. And that seems, that might be surprising to some viewers now, that, you just figure, oh, your brain is what it is, you grow and then it's stuck forever. And I know this is something that has even been sort of emerging in the past decade or two. Like, we've learned so much more about what this looks like. Can you tell us a bit more about that part, kind of what we know in the past decade or so?
Yes. So, basically until 1998, not too long ago, the prevailing belief in the scientific community, I'm not even talking, lay people, the scientific community, was that our brain doesn't change. That basically Freud was right, until the age of 3, all these physiological changes happen, all these early experiences leave their imprint on us. But after the age of 3, basically we have to make the best of our lot, and it won't change. 1998, a few breakthroughs in the area of neuroscience showed us that actually the brain continuously changes. And then the research, as you pointed out, over the past decade, consistently shows that whether it's through meditation, whether it's through exercise, whether it's through repeating certain mantras, words, by doing it repeatedly over and over again, the brain changes. In a very similar way, we're in the midst of the Olympics right now, and we see the people who are performing at such high level, such remarkable mastery over their bodies. And how did they get there? They got there through consistent, persistent action.
Right.
Doing this, I look at, Djokovic or Serena Williams, hitting that tennis ball. They do it automatically because they have neural pathways that were actually created through practice. Now, take this exact same idea and apply to the realm of self-help, of happiness, of personal improvement. The exact same idea. We can't hope to read a book on tennis and become great tennis players, or even better tennis players.
I really tried. I did.
It didn't work for you. Yeah.
Didn't work. No.
Yeah. and yet people think, okay, I'll just read this self-help book, or I'll attend this, lecture by a very charismatic speaker, and that will make all the difference. It won't. Right. It may be a trigger. It may be a first step of a 1,000-mile journey, but that's all it is.
That's so profound that I think there's an element, I guess, that is looking for that kind of one trigger to be the lasting difference, to feel like, because it is a commitment, right? Can you speak to that? Like the fact that it's to have this day in and day out commitment. So maybe you do, it's sort of, how some folks describe the experience of dieting, trying to lose weight, right? Like you'll eat really well for a day or two or a week or two, but then eventually there is this fatigue to the commitment. How do you sort of guide folks who maybe get the trigger, get on the right foot and say, I'm going to do this. My alarm is set. I'm going to meditate early in the morning, but then fatigue sets in and life sets in, and then you get derailed.
To my mind, that's the most important question we need to ask as psychologists or as change agents in general, because the ideas are out there. There are plenty of there's plenty of knowledge. Aristotle wrote about it, Lao Tzu wrote about it, the Buddha wrote about it or spoke about it. Right. But the question, the challenge is, how do you take these ideas and apply them and literally internalize them? Because it's so often that we read a book or we attend a lecture and we experience that high and we think, oh wow, this is the first day of the rest of my life. Now I'm going to make all this change, and it doesn't happen. In more cases, it doesn't happen than it does. So how do we do it? Well, there are a few things that we can do. First of all, think small changes. Rather than thinking, okay, now I'm going to start meditating for 3 hours a day because that's what my guru does. No, start with 3 minutes a day and build on it. And then, maybe eventually you'll get to 30. But even if you stay at 10, good enough. Or okay, now I've watched the Olympics, I'm going to, swim like, Ledecky. I'm going to just go and go and go. No, start with one lap, 2 laps, and build on it. The same with gratitude. Start with, once a week with your family to express gratitude around the table, or one night before you go to bed. Start and see what works for you, and then build on that. So small changes initially. Lower the bar, in other words. Second, it's much better to do it together. There's some fascinating research on change showing that people who attend a very impactful and powerful program, let's say, and specifically I'm thinking about research done on lifestyle, eat better, exercise more, live more healthfully. And what they showed is that people who went through this program, if you looked at them 6 months later, less than a quarter of them actually persisted, even though at the end of the program, they were, again, ready to transform their lives. Less than a quarter actually persisted, which, by the way, over 20% is quite a lot. It's quite a, good batting average. However, if you had those same people just told to find an accountability buddy, someone who went through the program with you, and all you do is, you on email, just ask each other once a week, so how are you doing? What have you been doing? In an empathic and accepting way. Just that change took it from under 25% to over 75% compliance. Wow. Now that's remarkable. We're not talking about, having a full-time coach remind you to, okay, did you exercise today? Did you eat well? Just an accountability buddy. And that can be, your partner, your friend, someone you met online. It doesn't matter, and you help one another. But having that can make a big difference in terms of, and by the way, once you introduce change, it's much easier to persist. Why? Because it becomes a habit. We first make our habits, and then our habits make us. So the first month, the first 3 months are hard, but after that, I don't need my mom to remind me now to brush my teeth in the morning.
Right. Right.
Been there, done that. She did that many
Right.
times, and now it's a habit. And in the same way, I don't need Oprah to remind me to do the gratitudes every night before I go to bed, or to exercise regularly. These are all habits that initially were difficult to implement, to inculcate. But once they're there, they're there.
It's getting over that initial hump. And like you're saying, it sounds like,
Yeah.
when the bar is low, you do kind of build momentum and you feel like I can do something, and that allows you to kind of get encouraged, and that builds a little bit of happiness, and you can kind of keep that happiness going.
Yeah, I like the fact that you use the word momentum, because it's exactly what it is. If you think about one thing leading to another, one act leading to another, and once you have that momentum, then your inertia carries you.
Right. And when you spoke about kind of the power of accountability, or just kind of the joint experience, for some people, they find that in different kinds of communities, whether it's a friend community, social community, faith community. Can you speak to, has there been a role at all for folks who find the faith community as part of their natural experience, or something that's helpful for them? Does that tie in at all to kind of building on happiness for people?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a lot of research on the impact of communities, and the research works both ways, by the way, in terms of helping, being helpful or being detrimental. So
Right.
if you're around smokers, you're much more likely to smoke. If you're around pessimists, you're much more likely to be pessimistic.
True.
If you're around people who live healthfully, you're more likely to do so. If you're around happy people, it's contagious, it turns out. There are there's some great work from Yale sociologist Christakis, who talks about clusters, and whether it's happiness clusters, clusters of people, or whether it's about health clusters or smoking clusters. Why? Because we're influenced by our environment. We're by our very nature social animals, and the same applies to different kinds of communities. For example, you think about religion. One of the reasons why religion contributes to happiness is because you're automatically, by virtue of being a member of that religion, you're part of a community. Whether you go on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you go and you spend time with people. You don't just spend time with people, you're also talking about virtues and values in most cases. So that, and just that social support in and of itself contributes to well-being.
Oh, that's excellent to know, that because that sometimes can feel like an intuitive beginning for some folks, that they have this part that's already there in their life. But if we can kind of help recognize and kind of build on what's already there, to be more cognizant of it, and kind of know that this is something that you can be intentional about, I think that can go a long way. The other part I was curious about, I came across this book once called The Happiness Advantage, that was talking about, right, I'm sure you know all these happiness books, that was talking about kind of the productivity element of it as well, like not just for your individual life, but to how this can impact, let's say if you're a company, why would you as a company want your employees to be happy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do a lot of work with organizations. Now, if I went to the to the C-suite and said to them, look, bring me in because I can help your employees become happier. In most cases, what they would say is, that's wonderful. Why don't you come and speak at our Christmas party?
Right.
Entertainment. It's nice.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah.
But if I say to them, look, bring me in, and I can increase levels of well-being, and as a result of that, your employees will become more innovative, more creative. They'll become more productive, more engaged. Retention rates will go up. Fewer employees will leave you, and you know what? Revenues will increase. They'll suddenly say, "Oh wow, so happiness pays. Happiness is a good investment. There is ROI on that."
Right.
And that changes the equation. There is so much research today showing that happiness does just that. You increase levels of well-being even by a little bit. I'm not talking about radical transformation here. You increase levels of well-being by 3-4%, which very doable. And creativity, innovation, productivity, engagement, retention, revenues all go up significantly.
That is, I mean, that's remarkable. Have you felt like when you presented this to people, was that surprising in the corporate world and in the C-suite environment?
Yeah, it is surprising, though. Once you think about it beyond, the superficial level, it actually makes sense, because
Right.
you think about when you feel a little bit happier, better off, you have more energy.
Right.
When you're down, generally what we want to do is close ourselves up, vegetate in front of the TV. It's when we're in a good mood, that's when we're energetic, that's when we're committed, that's when we're engaged. So it doesn't make intuitive sense. And then beyond intuition, I provide the tuition. That is what research is all for.
Right.
It's to show that these things actually work. Now, what's again intuitive at some level, but where tuition research does help, is to understand the relationship between success and happiness. Success doesn't lead to happiness. We spoke about it earlier. Reaching that, conquering that mountain is not what will lead to lasting happiness. And those people in the C-suite, they know that. They know that when they first became managers or first got that raise and started to make more money, they were very happy. But very quickly, that initial happiness, dissipates.
Right.
However, they also know that while success doesn't lead to happiness, if they increase levels of well-being, they will be more successful for all the reasons I discussed. So the relation between success and happiness is an important one to point to. And by the way, it's important not just to point to those managers, it's important to point that out to students in school.
Right.
I really did believe that, and I'm not alone here, that once I get into my, top choice school, or one of my top choices, I'll live the happily ever after. Right. Or once I get my dream job or find my, my dream partner, then I'll be set. That's not the case.
You're certainly not alone on that. And I think one of the very difficult things is that the bar keeps moving throughout your whole life, whether it's, and especially if you're in a competitive area of training. Some folks who listen to this are in the medical field. If only I get into this medical school, if only this residency, if only this, and the if onlys really just don't end ever. So this time where you're waiting to get happy or to become happy, it just seems like when you retire, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a big maybe, because it also doesn't happen then, unless you understand the formula is a different one. I talk about the arrival fallacy, and that is the illusion that once we arrive, once we get to a place, then we'll be happy. And again, it's a fallacy. It's an illusion. And the thing is, the metaphor, you use the metaphor of, the bar always moves. A similar metaphor, and one which personally I connect to as well, is Sisyphus. So what Sisyphus did, he pushed the rock up the mountain. He got to the top of the mountain, and the rock was rolled back, and then he had to push it up again. But the metaphor that applies to the situation of the arrival fallacy is what I've come to call Sisyphus 2.0. Why? Because, so Sisyphus pushes the rock up the mountain, and then the rock drops down. But the reason why it's 2.0 is because the mountain becomes steeper every time. So initially it was to get into a good college, or give it a numerical example, to make $3,000 a month, and then I'll be so happy. And you make it, and you're very happy. But then it becomes 5,000, and it becomes more difficult, and then it becomes 50,000, and it never ends. And the example for that is, all the very, very wealthy people around the world, all the very, very successful, again, the gold medalists. That doesn't guarantee happiness, because that mountain keeps on changing. The incline keeps on increasing, and it's never enough. It can never be enough, if that is our model of happiness.
That is so powerful. One of the lines that come to my mind is Bono, the lead singer of the band U2. There was a line where he once said, "You can never have enough of what you don't really need." So there's just never enough of it. And I think what you're saying is actually so liberating to so many people. When you can kind of take yourself out of this mountainous climb and say, hey, there's another path that it's not, all green pastures always, and you're just skipping all the time, but at least, it's more in your control as opposed to waiting for something to happen to you or to have some kind of measure of achievement, which is, I think, empowering and liberating. Like that's the vibe that I'm getting right now.
Yes. So, and here is the thing, I'm not against ambition. I'm not against hard work.
Yeah.
I think these things are wonderful. The thing that we need to identify, to understand is that our happiness is not contingent on achieving those things
Mm.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's about pursuing. So pursue something that is meaningful to you, whether it's medicine, whether it's teaching, whether it's banking, it doesn't matter. Find something that
Mm.
is meaningful to you and then pursue it and understand that what your
Mm.
happiness is contingent on is the pursuit of something meaningful. It's the
Mm.
appreciation of those things that you have. It's spending quality time with those people you care about. And
Mm.
so on. And these things, as you point out, are by and large, certainly in free countries where basic needs are met.
Right.
And that's important. Where
That is
basic
key.
needs are met, they're accessible to all of us.
That's that accessibility, I think, is maybe the hope that a viewer can walk away with today. I think I would love to talk to you all day, honestly, because I feel like there's so much for me to learn and so much for folks to learn, that this is something that's accessible at your fingertips and that you can do very practical, very small steps. So I would want people to learn more from you. How can people connect to you? How can they learn from kind of this wealth of the pursuit of happiness here?
Thank you for asking. So my website is at talbenshahar.com. That's one word. And there are links there to online courses that we offer, to books, and to a whole of information within this wonderful and growing field of happiness studies.
The happy field. It's a nice thing to be able to even talk about on a Thursday morning.
It's a happy field, and it's a field that provides space for pain and suffering and difficulties and hardship. That's part of the package. It's part of every life.
And I just want to flag that for a second, Tal, but as we're coming to a close, because one of the fallacies I feel like that people have about this subject is that the expectation is you'll just be, you'll have this euphoria all the time, that everything is amazing, and from everything I'm hearing from you is there is this understanding that there is a space for pain, suffering, reality of life, but we're really pursuing something that's going to help you actually deal with those things. That it's not some superficial feeling that we're trying to have people have. It's a reality that you can sort of internalize.
Yeah, and just a couple of things on that. First, the first step to happiness is allowing in unhappiness. Because if we reject unhappiness, if we reject sadness or anxiety or fear or envy or frustration, if we reject these emotions, they only intensify, they grow stronger. So the first step is, first of all, accepting it as part and parcel of every life. And second, to your point, and again, this is a medical analogy, what the science of happiness is about is strengthening our psychological immune system. Now, a strong immune system doesn't mean we don't get sick. It simply means we get sick less often, and when we do, we recover more promptly. And that is the goal, the realistic goal of the science of well-being.
That's beautiful. I mean, that really resonates with me. It's realistic, it's tangible, and it's something that we can sort of strive for. So Tal, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, and I'm sure our viewers are going to be very grateful for this as well. And I encourage everyone to connect on your website, talbenshahar.com. Check out the books, the courses. I know I'm signing up. I'm going to get a couple of copies because I want to strengthen my psychological immune system. It's flimsy. Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much.